Good morning and welcome. This is Megan Mansfield from Accordant Company. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar from Sage titled Sage Estimating Best in Class Estimating Suite. Our presenter today is Darren Pierce, Estimating Field Manager for Sage CRE. Before we get started, I want to address a few housekeeping items. Everyone is muted for a clean listening experience. If you have any questions, please type them into the questions box. We will collect the questions and address them at the end of the session. For the best viewing experience, please maximize your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be provided via email. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Darren.
All right, Megan, thank you so much for that introduction. And I want to thank everybody for joining in today. And this is Darren Pierce here at Sage Corporate in Beaverton, Oregon. Well, corporate, I say it's a site. We're an international company, of course. And just a little bit about myself. I've been around for about 23 years working with Sage, actually go beyond that, Timberline days, and working with our estimating solution. And as Megan said, we're going to be looking at the best-in-class Sage estimating suite. Just a little bit about how we're going to move through this presentation today. Quick PowerPoint. We don't want to PowerPoint you to death, but we do want to give you some concepts around what we're going to be showing you. And then we'll jump into product and work through the process of the solutions that we're going to be looking at. So we'll go ahead and jump in and get started, and I'll progress the slide here. So you know, the Sage estimating product has been around for about 40 years. We started off in the DOS days and elevated that to Windows, and then moved into a full SQL back end that we're working with in today. So we have evolved along the way as technology has evolved as well. Over 10,000 customers out there and working with our system today. And I mean organizations, I mean companies that are working with our solution. And when we look at the versatility, the flexibility of what the solution brings to the table, it really can work for any vertical, any construction company out there almost. And there's a few that we aren't the best fit for. You're doing civil, you're doing heavy highway, that type. We're not the best fit for that, but just about every other vertical out there, no matter what you do, we have the capability to work with your company. Multiple methods of, and I'm talking about within the solution itself, we have multiple methods of doing takeoff, from conceptual to detailed takeoff. So if you're looking at doing a parametric estimate with very little information, very little detail, we give you the capability of functionality of being able to produce a complete, accurate estimate from that. Or we have item and assembly takeoff, and we'll get into each one of those as we go through the process here. We have 2D and 3D seamless integration. So when we look at that, we look at the capability to work with those PDFs that you may be receiving to do your takeoff. And then 3D, a little bit of foreshadowing. There is an experience I'm having with my license of Navisworks, which is what we integrate with. They've changed how they license things, so my license isn't working today, but I'm going to give you the concepts through through the PowerPoint once we get to that point. Hopefully I'll have that license all fixed up after we get this presentation done, or at least later this week. Robust, flexible reporting capabilities. When we look at that, we give you a very versatile, flexible reporting capability to break the estimate down, slice and dice the detail of the estimate any way, shape, or form that you want. Now, in our last release, what we did is we put together a reportable data warehouse that gives us the opportunity to promote that information into a BI report, or wherever you want to go. Combine multiple data sets from other applications as well. So I'm going to give you a little bit of look at that and what that looks like. And then as far as the back office integration is concerned, of course, Sage has multiple accounting systems. We have Sage 100, Sage 300, and Intact Accounting. We're going to give you the opportunity to streamline that process of moving data from the pre-construction side to the back office. Click a button, we can generate that budget. Now, what's interesting about it is when you look at Sage 100, Sage 300, we have the job costing functionality within there, and it moves within to the job cost capability, creating that budget. Within the Intact world, it's a little bit different. We have that flow into the Intact product as an estimate. And if you're doing versioning, we have the capability to, of course, to promote as many of those estimates into the Sage Intact product. Well, what I'm going to show today, and I'm actually going to live show this, is showing this moving into our Sage 300 product. Click a button, I'll go ahead and generate that so we can create that budget. The other thing that we look at is databases to get you started. So if I was to create a database from scratch, it would take some time. And building that sometimes can take months and maybe even a little bit longer. So with that, we have pre-built databases out there. As you can see, I've got quite a list of them. So if you're looking for a database that has a pricing service that backs it up, then we have BNI database, which Joe Callahan at Accordant, one of the best estimating consultants I've ever worked with. He's been around for years and years and years. Great guy. And what he did is off of the BNI data, built out the database with our smart assemblies. And it's a wonderful database, and it is connected automatically to the digital takeoff solution that I'm going to show you. And then if you're looking at maybe doing a lot of government work, a lot of government contracts, and I usually think of that with means because sometimes that is a requirement out there. Or if you're just looking for a plug number with means, maybe you're a construction management firm and you need to have those labor productivities or whatever it may be, we do have a full library of the means databases ready within our system as well. And then if you go beyond that, we have database developers that have been in the industry. Both of these gentlemen right here have been with Sage or Timberline, or how far ever you go back, for about 35 to 40 years, building databases for us. The thing that you look at there is they've built these databases for almost every vertical, and it really jumpstarts the capability to get up and deploy the product and get to that ROI that we want you to get to. So a little bit about that, and what we'll do is we'll jump into a live presentation. And I'm going to start off with the digital takeoff solution. And a couple things about this solution that you want to make sure that you're aware of. First of all, it reads PDFs in their native format. So there's no conversion. It just automatically reads those PDFs. Matter of fact, I loaded up an 800-page set in here. It took literally seconds, and I started doing takeoff with that. Then the other thing, it is a multi-user environment here. So within this product here, we can have as many of the individuals within your estimating department partnering up to do takeoff. And they can be on the same plan set, the same plan page at the same time, and we track all of that activity. And up here, I'll go up here and show a little bit about this. Is what's our trace library. This can be organized in any way, shape, or form. I've got test drive workflow in here just to organize it, so when I do presentations, it's organized in a manner. These are your digital markers. I go back to the day when we used to have the can of markers and paper, and then we go through and we use those markers to mark off the paper plans. Thank goodness those days are over. We do have the opportunity to use digital takeoff to get that done. A couple of differentiators that separates this solution from others in the industry is, first of all, when I look at additional pages, additional information, scope, spec I may want to read as I go through the process, this solution provides as many additional pages as you need. So if I have an individual like I worked with one time that had 15 monitors, we have 15 different pages that he can read whatever information that he needs. Typically, I see they're going to have a primary screen and about 2 different monitors on both sides of that, but 15's a lot. But when we look at this, we have the capability to have this show here. And another thing that's important about the solution is it does give you the capability to have multiple scales per page. So in other solutions I've worked with, we had to copy the page, and then we have to name it by the scale. And then pretty soon I've got 3 or 4 or 5 pages that represent that. In this case, this blue border gives me a different scale other than the overall scale. In this case, I just created a bunch of different scales that we have right here. I'm going to flip this over into this page right here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that additional page real quick. So one last thing I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to get into some digital takeoff here, start working through that, is the capability to, of course, overlay, compare one page to the next. I've already gone through the process of aligning this page here, but just so you know, you get that addendum, that revision. We have the capability to overlay that. Blue's new, red's old. Make the change and to the takeoff that you've done, and you're off and moving, off to the races, so to speak. So give you that capability to do that overlay and do it very quickly. I'm going to use this hyperlink to get to where I want to be. So now let's start doing some takeoff. Now, the thing that when I look at is with all of the contractors, the construction companies that I worked with over the years is, of course, we do things differently. Now, if you're a contractor that doesn't need to get into the detail of your takeoff, well, maybe I'm just going to do a unit price. I'm going to go through the process of taking off these walls here. And what you're seeing here is Snap AI technology and giving you the capability to snap to those vector lines. So there's two types of PDFs. There's a raster, there's a vector. A raster is just basically digital ink on digital paper, but a vector has some underlying intelligence, geometry that we can take advantage of. So in this case, Snap technology gives me the opportunity to go through the process of snapping to those lines and then generating that length that I care about. I'm not looking to get into the profile, the studs, the blocking, the plates, and so on and so forth about that wall. But if we do want to get down to that detail level, if we are generating a bill of materials, and we do want to know that everything that makes up that wall, what we can do is now look at this takeoff right here. I'm going to go ahead and close that guy off, snap to that line. And with the solution, so if there are some individuals out there that have been working with our estimating product, but haven't looked at this product, what it does is extends those assemblies, those variables that you have within items and smart assemblies, and gives you the opportunity to enter that information as we go through the process of takeoff here. So I've got this variable list specific to this takeoff. I want to make stud spacing. Those item tables that back up those variables. I want to make a choice between 2x4, 2x6, 2x8, if you will, and make that choice right there. We'll put in the number of corners and we'll generate some drywall from this as well. So when you think about those variable inputs, those specs that we're going to have, we're going to give you the opportunity to make those choices along the way. So if you're using our estimating system, you know what I'm referring to right there. So I say okay to that, and we're good to go. I'm going to do one other thing because downstream from here, I want the capability to pick out, well, this specific wall. But you know, when we look at it, a lot of the companies that I work with, we have the 16 or the 50 divisional breakout, uniformat, whatever it may be. We may have a requirement from the customer to break it out by floor, by building, by room, by system, whatever that may be. You may want to do that as well. So we'll just call this wall-in demonstration or demo. Let's keep it short. Now, the other thing as we go through the process here is with those work breakdown structures, you'll notice over here, I've got base bid, I've got bid item 1. So we're going to give you the opportunity to tag that takeoff as you go through the process. So a few more examples of what we look at here, and I'll change this to a polyline and change this to the Snap AI. So when I'm snapping to those lines, when I think about going around these corners right here, that takes a little bit of time. In this case, we're going to give you the opportunity to snap to that line, and let's call this a cutout right there for the pool. So this could be paver stones or whatever it may be going around this pool. It's concrete in this case, but we'll go ahead and enter this in, and I'll say it's 4 inches. We're not going to have any reinforcement. By the way, for those of you doing concrete, and when you do your takeoff, and you probably have those variable lists where you say, I want to name the size of the bars, we can do that, of course. If you're doing it at tonnage, you know, taking off rebar and a tonnage and outsource the detail to a downstream partner, we'd do that as well. But in this case here, we're going to put in 3,000 PSI and move forward. I'll do one other naming convention just so you get the sense of it when we go downstream with this, and I'll call pool. Just color a couple other examples. Maybe want to do a shingles takeoff right here. Very quick, very easy to do. And what's nice about it is, as I go through this process, notice where I'm snapping to here. I'm not even going to the end of the line. It's using that intelligence to go to that last point for me. Pretty cool stuff. Now, I will give you a little bit of hint on what's coming in the future, just so you're aware of that with this solution. We're going to give you the capability as I fill this information in. And what's the slope? We can go ahead. What's the rise over run that we've got for this particular takeoff? It's 5 over. And what is the sheathing thickness? We'll just stick with what we have there. Say okay. But in the future, what we're looking at is taking the AI to a whole nother level, and where this can be all taken off automatically. So that is coming, and that capability is out there. So look for that in the near future, probably within the next couple months. We'll be promoting that. But hey, goes out, does all the takeoff for us. All we have to do is assign those objects, and we'll get into that more in the future. So let's jump to one more page here and finish up doing our takeoff. There's just 2 more things I want to do. Go in and do my foundation, and I want to snap to this line right there. If it's the same level or the same height all the way around, that's great. We can take advantage of that. And then if I put in 10 here, we also want that line to grow with the takeoff. So when we go through the process, it'll grow with that as well. So I filled that in. Last thing, but not least, as I mentioned, I've worked some other solutions. We've sold other solutions from Sage. So when we were looking at utilizing the functionality of automatically finding things, well, let's do something real quick just so I can get to what I want to get to. Let's hide all of that stuff. Let's use a layer real quick. And when we do this, I can go ahead and highlight this guy right here. And I'm going to cancel out of that real quick. Let's start this again. I'm going to highlight this guy right here. This is a pier that we have right there. Caisson, whatever you want to call it. I want to find this guy. As many places that it exists on this page right here. Well, we can go to the applicable trace. Again, these are called traces. These are digital markers that we're working with. And I can search. Now, the difference between the solutions that I've worked with in the past is, well, we'd get a lot of garbage sometimes with that stuff, thousands of things, and I won't tell you what solution that was, or you'd sit there and you'd watch it do its whiz-bang thing. Go out and search and find those things. In this solution, we have the capability to do takeoff as it's doing its searching. Now it's finished already, but I wanted to highlight that so that we're not losing that productivity, drinking our coffee, waiting for the solution to do its thing. That's pretty powerful. So in this case right here, I want to go out and see what it has found. Well, it's found all of those particular items. Let's expand that so we can see what wraps around that guy. We can review on the drawing. Now, if they aren't applicable, this came up in just my, I typically don't go in and kind of do this, but since if these aren't applicable, then we just double click on them, make it really easy so that I don't want to include that in the count. Okay, great. We just unchecked. So you can go through and check and uncheck the ones that make sense. In this case right here, we've got those that didn't really fit the bill, so to speak. So we'll purge that and we'll save. So I've done the counting. I'm going to go ahead and I'll call it peers one more time, and then I'll enter in the information. One thing I really should mention here is I've been kind of going through the presentation here, and you've noticed, of course, this pop-up window that's happening. This solution is full of shortcut keys that give you the opportunity to navigate very quickly using the keyboard. Pretty powerful stuff. We don't want you to have to, have to click the button every time you're doing something or go up to the toolbar. By the way, there's a quick access toolbar that I've been utilizing as well. Build this to the way that you want to see it. And maybe you have 20 estimators in your group. Everybody can have the way they want to see that done. Okay, let's go ahead and put in the height of this guy, and I'll just throw in 10 foot, say okay. Now, last but not least, when we look at this, you may have to find this on multiple pages. Well, rather than going through it one at a time, let's do them all. So this gives you the power of going through. It's doing it in the background. Hey, you're doing your takeoff, and it's doing its thing in the background, and you're able to review those once it's done. So now let's take it to the next process here. A lot of the companies that work with solutions out there, and it could be Bluebeam or it could be something else. When we're going through the takeoff and doing that, we're gathering those quantities, and then what's our next step? Well, sometimes it's more of a manual movement of data, right? So we're grabbing those quantities and we're manually moving that into the whatever, Excel or whatever it may be. What we want to do is get away from that and give you the opportunity to generate these takeoffs into the estimate. It could be 10, it could be 1,000 of those particular items listed right here. So this bridge application is giving us the opportunity to automatically throw out the broadcast net there and bring these in to the system. Pretty powerful stuff. And I mentioned it is multi-user, so I want to see what Bob, my alter ego's done today, and what I've done today, and it looks like I'm doing a little bit more work than Bob is doing today. But we have the capability to see that. Matter of fact, if I wanted to drill down to that pool over here, I most definitely can do that as well. Well, let's generate these to the estimate. It's very quick, very easy to do. Done. Now, here's the other thing is the solution wants to grow and give you the opportunity. And I don't think growth is the right word here, but it wants to track all of the capabilities, all the functionality, or the changes, should I say, to these takeoffs. Let's bring all of that back. So for whatever reason, let's say this guy right here, it's gonna change. So, and I'm just gonna do this. Well, the system tracks that. So for those of you that are looking at your screen, and maybe you don't have a big screen, is you'll notice that there is a pencil mark right here. This pencil mark is an indicator of that change. If I went down into the pool here and I said, let's make a change to this guy right here, let's go to 4,000 PSI. I can say, okay, I can review this. Now there's two of them. We also give you one central spot to make changes. So if there is a variable change that happens at a global level within the system here, let's say this goes to 5,000. By the way, we haven't had our Starbucks coffee in the morning. We have our minimums and maximums that protect us from going outside of range. So of course, here in the Northwest, there's a Starbucks on every corner. Well, that's probably true about every town, right? Starbucks on every corner. But anyway, we'll go ahead and make that change to all of those particular items out there. Review it. And now you can see we've got multiple changes that have happened. If I dive into one of these, boom, it went from this to this. Any of these variables changed, we'll be able to track that and update the estimate. Really quick, really easy to do. Let's go ahead and make the notes today. And let's call this, let's put Accordant in here. I write a bunch of notes. You can write a book in here, really, to tell you the truth, if you want to describe that and have that move over into the estimate as well. So pretty powerful stuff. Now, go into the estimate. So as we jump into the estimate, it's taken all of those takeoffs and it has generated and built out the estimate. So if you've been working with the estimating system here, here's Accordant project today. If you've been working with the system and you go through the process of doing takeoff within our application, we've got assemblies, you've got quick takeoff. I'll get into models later, but what that's doing is going through and generating all of those assemblies, all those items for you automatically based upon what we've done within the digital takeoff. Now, in the estimate spreadsheet, it's a very flexible tool, but it also has some safety nets that we built into it. First of all, expand, we can collapse, see the detail at the detail level we want. We can combine like items, summarize those like items. So in that case there, where I sent it over from that plan set, we had multiple takeoffs, multiple concrete pads that we'd taken off. Now we can actually have that grouped together, so it just flows over as just one takeoff if we wanted to, where you have them all, they are exactly the same, so to speak, as far as the detail that you filled in, but not getting into that. So combine those like items and see that information, the detail, the way we want to see it. Now, if I dive into this, and by the way, for those of you that don't know our system, database driven, as I kind of mentioned, we've got database developers out there. These databases are already created for you. If you use means or if you use the BNI, you've got those production rates, you've got that pricing already built in. And we're going to talk about cost city indexing and factors in a little bit. But when we look at this, what is the construct of this particular item right here? Here's the unit cost. Here's conversion, productivity rate that we're looking at. And the other things that we can do in here, I'm not going to get into all of them, but if there's anybody that is working with our accounting system, we have the cost code structure that we can send that information into and build out that budget for you. If you're not using our accounting system, we still can have a construction or a cost code structure that we can spit out from here and flow into whatever solution that you're working with. Up here, of course, Leonard Foote, we've got waste, crews. How do you represent your labor? Do we have crews that are going out there? Do we need to have a crew every time that we, well, let's not create one. Well, let's go ahead and select one actually. So here's a crew. I can edit this crew. Matter of fact, we've got the resources to build out the crew even further. So we're going to build out the crew the way that we want. Every time I take off this item in the future, it would have this crew associated with it. So it really is dependent upon how you represent your labor. And is it going to be crew, man hour, or you want to do both? We leave it up to you. So that is an item. And that is with those databases pre-built and assemblies are pre-built. We call them smart assemblies, all ready to go for you. Now let's look at the estimate itself. We've got labor hours, we've got labor cost per unit, labor productivity, and labor amount. Well, if I go in and make a change, I'll say 39. Of course, it's going to have an impact on my labor. But what's my cost per unit? I'll just say 10 bucks or 19. It's going to back calculate there. And it's going to, of course, have an impact on the labor. Maybe productivity. We need to make an adjustment to productivity. Let's do it on a more of a broader scale. Let's call it 20%. Say, okay, here's the original and the adjusted. What was it adjusted to? Now, in this case right here, I may say it's just 5,000 bucks and have a lump sum in there. We're going to highlight that for you. The key to that is over the 23 years that I've worked with, most of the companies that I have worked with come from a competitive solution, and it's not other solutions out there that are vertically positioned, but it is Excel. And most of us start off in the Excel world because it's very flexible, very easy to work with. What we look at there is we do risk when we're typing into all of these fields, maybe overwriting a formula, maybe breaking a link, maybe doing something. With this system, we protect you from that. So when we look at that, we're going to give that, that's just kind of a look and feel of that. Now, the other thing that we look at is how do we want to standardize how we look and review the information, the data? Well, our estimate can be broken out in what we call layouts here in any way, shape, or form that you want. So if I wanted to just see this particular view right here, oh, I don't like the markup, I'll use add-ons in here. I need another view in here. I need to make some notes in here. So if I need that to come in here, I can type in notes. I can put in these notes and say, okay, put whatever notes you want in the system and we're good to go. And that guy doesn't belong there. We're going to put him over here. Save this as your view and you're good to go. As you can see, I've done it a million times. And the other thing is there are shared and then there are your personal views. So as an estimator, I want to look at it a different way. I want to dissect it a different way. But maybe as the group, and God forbid if somebody gets hit by that proverbial bus that we talk about, we can come in and see this information in the way that we want to see it. Now, when we look at how we brought the details over from the digital takeoff, you notice I was typing in, I was doing bid item, I was doing location. We're going to talk about some things there. But first of all, that assembly, as you can see, we had some revisions to, well, almost all of these, but when we make those revisions, we want to dive in. We want to see the audit trail behind them, the original, the reversal, and what's being reflected in the estimate. There's my wonderful notes. Write a bunch of notes in there. So the reason why I say that again is there's about 4,000 characters that you can put in each one of those. Now, from this screen, of course, there's a lot of things that we can do. Notice my adjustment to productivities right there as well. But we look at this, maybe I need to substitute an item for this guy. Let's get into the database. Maybe I need to list an item, another item that wasn't originally brought in here. I can put him down here as well. I can put an attachment, my notes, and specific to this, I can adjust the productivity as well. The idea behind what we've done within our solution is make it very flexible. So wherever you are, or almost wherever you are, you can make the edits that you need to make. Whereas some other solutions I've worked with in the past make you go to 1 screen, 2 screens, 3 screens, to do those types of things. Now, when we look at the way I want to break it out, again, when you think about how we're breaking out this guy right here, 16 divisions, our database can be broken out in multiple different ways. So I'm in the item takeoff right here. I can see this database broken down by unit format, 16 division, 48 division, or maybe I want to look at the job cost phase. How do we want to see that? So a database actually within a database, if you look at it that way. But down here, what we're going to see is maybe location. I want to see the pool. This is what was involved with the pool. Bid item. I want to see what those bid items were. I can go ahead and see the detail for bid item 1, bid item 2. Let's very quickly go ahead and move this guy into bid item. He was on assign, so we have that capability. In the recent years, we've had a release that went out the door that allowed us to work with alternates, options in a very formalized methodology. So if I look at the summary right here, I can see all of those options, and I'm going to show you how they impact the estimate. I'm going to go ahead and say approve at this point. And of course, when I look at these, 940 for the base bid, we've got this approved. Let's open this up a little bit. So when we go through the process with the customer and say, okay, what do you think about alternate 1 and what we're going to be doing there? Or maybe the communication via email, whatever that may be. Oh, let's say it's pending. Well, let's mark it off, but let's still show it on the estimate. If it's rejected, same thing, show it on the estimate. But now I don't want to see it on the estimate. So let's just remove it completely. That, of course, has an impact on our totals page as well. So if I look at my totals page here, I go through the process of looking at our totals. By the way, this is a summary of the estimate broken down by the categorical breakout. And here's, of course, subtotals that we can work with within the system. Just a quick thing about our totals page. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but we give you a lot of flexibility on how you create those markups by category, by total. Pick which total that you're going to work with there. There's a rate and there's a dollar per unit as well. Determine what range you're going to focus that add-on, that markup on. give you that capability as well. A lot of flexibility within the system. What's that bond schedule that you've got right there? Let's input that in there as well. And for companies that work nationally, maybe there's different jurisdictions on how we're going to calculate those markups. You can have as many of these totals page in here as you want. Totally up to you. But back to the impact that we have here. Okay, well, if you'll notice I'm going to take this down just a bit, move it up. Notice the total right here. Okay, well, that's going to be approved. Of course, it's going to impact the total, right? It's going to give you the capability to move that in and out of the total and in and out of the spreadsheet here. Powerful stuff. So let's keep the totals page up for just a minute and jump over here and expand this right there. The other thing that I want to mention is this, allocatability. And I have to look up and see if allocatability is a word. But when we look at this, we have these items that are allocatable. Well, what does that mean? Well, we have our total amount, we have our add-on amount, we have our grand total. Well, how are those being allocated over that particular area? What's that look like right there? We're going to expose these to the spreadsheet in our next release, by the way. But in this case right here, if I want to have these particular items or these markups represented on the totals page and have their own job cost code information as they flow downstream, we can do that very easily. But in this case right here, you can see the add-on. There's no add-ons over here. We'll say okay and done. Now we've got those allocated in there. One last thing I'll show you, the view that I typically like to show here is this job cost report. How's this going to flow into our job cost system? Now, with that being said, I can go ahead very quickly, and this is the same mechanism, the same wizard that we go through with Sage 100, Sage 300, Sage Intacct. Different questions along the way, but I can go through, what are we going to do? Round accumulated item quantities, allocate the add-ons that are marked as allocatable. I could actually map this to a WBS code. Intacct, it's not doing that at this point. Those of you that are looking at Intacct, it is not doing that at this point. Next version it will, next release it will. Then we're going to say, send it to job cost, boom. We're going to go ahead and have that progress over into job costing. Now, depending upon how you install the product, that could just be a click of a button, or it could be an export import, really, to tell you the truth. But in this case right here, it's going to send it over based upon that cost code structure that we put in place. And it's going to give me the total here in just a second. And that's what was done, 987,000. I'm going to show you that in just a moment, and then I'm going to come back to estimating and show you some other things. But last but not least, when we get into that conversation, well, I'm going to tell a little bit of story here too. So if I have solutions that are not integrated, and I manually move and do takeoff, if I get into a situation where I need to know where that cost came from being represented in my estimate here, well, I have to go over to whatever product I'm using and kind of go through maybe a needle in a haystack, unless you have great notes, which may be the situation. But in this case right here, if I wanted to get back to this guy and say, okay, drill down, it's going to take me back to the digital takeoff where that is represented. So in this case right here, that pool is highlighted. So bidirectional seamless integration that we work with right there. All right, so with that, I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to go to job cost. I promised you I'd do this, so I'm going to do it. And what's interesting about it is well, a lot of people are kind of, I'm not gonna show the real flow because you have to post and all of this other stuff. But when I look at this guy right here, what you do in the 300 world anyway is you would post that estimate over here. So exported, today's 3/1 March already. Wow. So say, okay, let's go ahead and do that. Let's call it this and say, okay. So I posted. So with that being said, Sage 100, if you're utilizing that, it's a direct write. There is no posting that you do. It just automatically does that. Same thing with the Intact product. And here, if I go into my inquiry now, I look at my estimate spreadsheet. There it is. There's Accordance demo project. Let's drive into the details. Let's go even further. Labor, material breakout, subcontract. Let's dive into the labor and even go further. And we use a very cool naming convention that it did come over from our estimating product, exported estimating estimates. Anyway, so with that being said, if I think about sometimes entering all of that detail into the back office, that takes sometimes hours to get that accomplished. So with that being said, we're going to make that a click of a button for you. So we dive back over into the estimating. And when we look at the flexibility of doing takeoff, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what models brings to the table and give you an example here, is models gives us the opportunity, there's a lot of different ways of thinking about models. If I think about model, I think about maybe even 3D. But when we look at what we did with models is we want to give you the opportunity with very little information based upon your assumptions that you make for concrete or whatever it may be, and your historical pricing, we want to give you the capability to generate an estimate. So in this case right here, I'm going to do that real quick. And we're going to generate a full estimate. I won't get into the details of each one of these, but you can build these. Matter of fact, we have companies, this is the only way that they do their estimating, just so you're aware. But what is the footprint, perimeter? Punch in this information here. Okay, when we're done at the end of the day, as you can see my naming convention up here, I can close this out and I can generate this estimate. These are multiple assemblies that are being generated from that. So it's cascading that detail into all of those assemblies. So in this case right here, I've got a complete project that's done. And just a quick story, one of our sales individuals was working with a company in Las Vegas that this is what they did. And he went in there and said, okay, let me generate this for you guys. And they were working on a project just like this, generated about 15, 20 minutes. And what he was within 1% of what they'd done within 2 to 3 weeks. So pretty powerful stuff here. Gives us our unit, gives us this. Now, if you're negotiating, I can say, hey, Mr. Customer, you signed the dotted line. I'll go ahead and create a variance, spread it. Maybe I know the unit cost here, what it should be, spread it on specific areas within that estimate. And then when you look at, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and I meant to close you out. You can park these anywhere you want. You can float these screens wherever you want. But when we look at this here, I want to maybe change this by a locale. This is based upon means. So if I wanted to make a change to this, we call them factors now, used to be cost city indexes back in the day. You can just double click on that one and make the adjustment to the whole estimate. So if you're a national corporation and you want to make those adjustments using means, you can build your own factors as well. The last thing that I'm going to look at here is the project that I did, brought over, is our reporting. When you look at it, if we're self-performing the work, we may want to send out a quote sheet to our downstream partners, put in your unit price, we're good to go. Put your logo up there, so on and so forth. And of course, it's getting you the order quantity. Look at form oil right there, that many square foot, that many gallons. That's what we're going to do right there. Spit it out, give us your pricing, bring it in. If you're looking to look at our standard estimate report here, I love the flexibility of what the solution brings to the table. So in this case, how many times are we going to generate and give this to to a customer? Right, not very often, I would say. So in this case right here, what we want to do is we want to sort it differently. I don't want that much detail. Let's go by phase. Let's break it out by those locations that I built into the takeoff. Now we preview it a different way. Now it's broken out by those things, the roofing shingles. Let's get into one of those things where I named. There's the pool down here. Well, that's still too much information. Let's take it another level higher. So we're summarizing it up until it's at a level where you want it as an estimator or where a customer wants to see it. And then we look at the capability to compare one estimate to the next, or up to 10 estimates side by side. So in this guy right here, I want to generate them, and I've got these multiple layouts the way that I want to see it. I can say variance report. Let's actually say Sage variance report. I can see it in that manner as well. I'm going to roll it up even further. Let's choose a different one here with the logo. I want to show you our new logo there. There you go, right there. Not much change to it, but looking at that, we can summarize this up one more level. And the idea is how flexible can we go with this? What range do we want to show? Maybe we want to only show the exterior site. We can do it just by saying, okay, let's do that. So pretty dang flexible as far as our reporting is concerned. And one of the things that I wanted to expose based upon our last version that we put out the door is BI reporting, giving you the capability to extend this out to wherever you are. You could be on the beach, and God forbid if you're working on the beach, but if you were on the beach and you wanted to see details about a project or whatever it may be, this gives us the opportunity to expose this in a BI format here and take that data and promote it to the cloud, right? So we have the capability to say, oh, I want to know what in healthcare, what is our typical square foot for these divisions that we break out here, or for this particular project here, and zeroing in. I don't think that's huge, but it is zeroing in on a map right there for you. And we look at that, we have that capability to see what the average is over all of those projects that we worked with in the past. So this is something new that we've done, and we've created that data warehouse that I mentioned, that reportable data warehouse that exposes that detail the way that we want to see it. So if you've got an individual, or heck, you know, if you want to work with Joe Callahan, he'll be able to help you build out these types of things as well if you're working with the system. And I promised to talk about, that's kind of what I wanted to show today, but I did promise to give you kind of an indicator. As I mentioned, my license for Navisworks right now is a little bit in flux. It's fluid, let's say. I'm working with them to get it all working so that I can activate it. I will tell you, protocols within our firewall system that we have at Sage are not allowing me to get to their entitlement server. But anyway, that's a long story. I'll get to it. But here's the thing is of course you have a rendering that you're working with there. This is the bridge that I showed you that connects to the digital takeoff. So it's connecting both to 2D and 3D. Beautiful, right? And what it will do is when I map certain things, in this case, basic wall, it's kind of blurry, then it will find all of those basic walls that are in this rendering right here. Okay, great. It's going to go ahead, you click the button and you generate it to the estimate. Awesome. Now, in comes that new rendering. More details, have more objects, and maybe changes to that rendering have happened. Well, if you get that, you want to overlay it over the top of that last one that I showed you. Now the system is going to give you the opportunity to see the changes. So you can see all those pencil marks right there. And you may have to lean into the screen a little bit to see those, but you know, maybe walls have been taken out. And if I could click on that, I would typically show, hey, these are the differences. This is why this wall changed over here, so to speak. But I can't do that right now. But what we can do is then generate that to the estimate. So it gives you that comparative capability where you've got the initial rendering, then you compare one to the next, and then of course I just generated the estimate, so to speak, so that you could see that. It's really all part of a video that I created years ago. And so I just took snapshots of that video. If you want it, let us know. I can send you the video. I can send that to Megan, and she can promote that to the rest of the crew out there. So with that being said, I'll put some information up there. It looks like we might have some questions that have happened along the way. So Megan, are you there?
Yes, I am here, and we do have one question in the chat.
Okay.
The question is, my eTakeoff access toolbar won't keep the customization that I give it, so I've had to redo it many times. How do I stop that?
Well, the thing that I would want to talk to you offline about is what version are you on, first of all? Second of all, the steps that you're going through to do that. Really, to tell you the truth, that should be automatic, but I'd want to talk with you offline on that. So if you want, you can email me and we can chat about that.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Does anybody have any other questions? Please type them in the chat.
And I say email, I better promote my email, right?
Right, and I would also follow up with this gentleman with your email, but there it is right there.
Yeah, go ahead and shoot me an email, whoever that may be.
Yep, I have his name, Nick Winston, okay. So we will certainly follow up with Nick. Okay. Anybody else have any questions to type into the chat?
I'll keep Mike's information up here.
Okay, if not, obviously you can email Darren, you can email Mike Fiducia here at Accordant if you have more questions. But if there are no more questions, we will conclude the webinar. And thank you again for joining us, and have a great day. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a great day. Have a good week.